Hello, welcome to the fourth session of the Tomosi Business Support Training Series for the year 2020. The purpose of these sessions, as we know, is to support the Tomosi Group staff and management to raise both their capabilities as well as their performance. We also use these sessions to do a greater good, which is to share our experience over the years with those young entrepreneurs and business people who are out there making an effort to build their startups, who are in the middle of their businesses in Uganda and across Africa. We have now crossed to a new topic. It is called customer service. We spent the last 3 weeks on the subject of sales. Although I know we didn't exhaust sales, and I know we shall return to it, especially the matter of handling objections. We didn't cover that. We will return to it. But I think we covered good ground, some very good ground, for those of you who were meeting this tool of business for the first time. We learned about the 4 stages of a sales call. We said it is the preliminary stage, the investigation stage, the demonstration of capabilities stage, and the stage of finally obtaining commitment from a buyer. We also understood that the best way to unveil the needs of a customer is to know how to ask the right questions. We studied the 4 sets of questions, which were situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and need payoff questions. Well, I hope you'll put these into practice for your next sales call, and I can't wait to meet you on the road and to hear you say this made sense. Today's session is recorded at the Tomosi's farm here in Weshare, where I grew up, where I was born and where I was raised. I wish I could get you the picture sound of the birds that wake us up at 6 a.m. The smells, the sunrises, the sunsets, everything here is breathtaking. Everything, especially in the rainy season, comes alive. If you are in agriculture, like us, and you are listening to this podcast, you know we are facing a strange phenomenon on account of this coronavirus pandemic. The farms have good produce, it is raining heavily, it allows us to plant beyond the March season for the next crop, the season we call Katumba in Runyachitara, but the market is slow. And it is severely, I shouldn't even use the word slow, I should say it is severely depressed, especially for milk, which is our core product. The prices have tumbled so badly, leaving many farmers staying awake at night, thinking of ways and means on how to pivot out of this situation. Yet when you go to towns, people are crying for food. You know, I've been thinking of the many restaurants across the country that are closed, the schools, the transport businesses that deliver all this food across the country, and how much this lockdown has affected food purchases. Yet, as we see in the global statistics, we are told that food processing is billed to be the positive gainer out of this pandemic. But for now, we must think of a restaurant that was taking 500 liters of milk a day to make cakes, teas, and coffees for its customers, and now for a month, there are no purchases. I think of jobs of chefs, of cleaners, of waiters and waitresses, jobs that many restaurants are going to have to rethink when the nation reopens, because I suppose businesses and their owners are going to be pushed to use more technology and less human contact where possible. Well, the long-term effect of social distancing is also not known yet. But what I know, and what I'm sure of, is that sometimes behaviors and habits come out of crisis, and some habits developed as societies over time, such as large weddings of young people, especially if they are not yet employed, the funeral gatherings with people spending more money on the dead rather than the living. If these habits are negatively impacted by this situation, so be it. It is good for savings in our nation. But in general terms, crises in life tend to point us to what matters most. And crises tend to show us the value of what we usually take for granted. In this case, the value of having our own markets and knowing our customers so closely, this hasn't been a strong value for many African businesses. Now, who do you sell your goods and services to, even if you've perfected the art of selling? A market can be composed of business to business, which they call B2B, and business to consumer, which they call B2C. But all these are simple categorizations to help us understand. What we need to know is that on the other end of the line, in an office or home, there's a human being with purchasing power that consumes your product. Now, an aggregate of these consumers is what gives you a market. So therefore, the process of building, nurturing, and securing markets is war by other means. In fact, let me tell you, nations go to war to wrest markets from others, including taking action at changing tastes and preferences of the consumers in that market so that they suit the tastes and preferences of the invading country. I have an example. England, through a franchise given to her businessmen under the British East India Corporation, invaded the nation of India, and the year was 1757. The purpose was to secure a source of cotton, tea, spices, rice, and other commodities for England's Industrial Revolution. The Indian economy at that time contributed 23% of GDP of the world. At that time, they were among the top 5 with a sizable market. By 1947, when India gained her independence, the country was less than 3% of the global output and one of the poorest in the world with recurring famines. What happened? Well, the British East India Company collected taxes from all Indians. They kept a third of that national collection for themselves, and they used this to buy Indian produce from peasants, a wickedly clever way to finance British Industrial Revolution. Now, this devious behavior was intended to destroy the production capabilities of Indians. Just to get the scale of this loot, pre-British India had revenues in excess of United States dollars 450 million, which at the time was 10 times larger than any European country. It is calculated that India lost, listen to this, lost some United States dollars 45 trillion. 45 United States dollars trillion, the big T, between 1757 and 1938. In today's terms, this is the combined size of both China and the US economies, or 17 times the size of GDP of Britain. You know what? If you have interest in these matters like me, please go and read the work of Shashi Tharoor. He has got a good book called The Inglorious Empire, and another lady professor called Utsa Patnaik. She's a teacher at one of the Indian universities. Now, consumers and markets have always been battleground for ideas that either generate wealth or cause poverty, and they have been over centuries protected by force of arms, and these days you could say by laws first, but war if necessary. Nations that do not make an attempt at building ideas and protecting their own become supermarkets and dumping grounds for the innovations of other people. Well, the British India Company needed to force open the larger market of China after they had colonized India in order they could sell opium from India into China. Opium from India into China by the British. Now, using the full force of the Navy, Britain attacked China in 1841 and forced it to open its market, and thereby establishing Hong Kong as a British trading and military base for more than 100 years. You know, I was studying for my master's degree in Wales when the British handed over Hong Kong to China. And I noticed at that handover, watching on television as a young man, generations that are raised under post-colonial rule tend to have a poor grasp of history. And they are worse when among them, some people assume leadership offices. This is because they are not taught about injustices committed by their ancestors. And you know, this was the case with Mr. Blair, then Prime Minister of Britain at the time, who said he didn't understand why Jiang Zemin, the Chinese president who presided over the handover, when he, Zemin, reminded Mr. Blair that the chapter of historical injustice had been brought to an end. Well, Blair thought this wasn't an issue. Why? He forgot that Britain had introduced opium, destroyed production, separated families, and caused mental illnesses to the Chinese. They took away their market for over 100 years. You know what? Yet the British would never sell this terrible opium to their own citizens. Remember what I call the exercise of forcing change of tastes and preferences in a market? This is an example, what I just described. The generations raised in wealth in the West, even when that wealth has been stolen from others, tend to deliberately forget history. They have a new word now for this forgetfulness. I found out recently. They call it misremembering. Misremembering, which is an ingenious way to hide shame, I guess. You know, and I know how we in Africa imbibe these changing terminologies. Capacity building today, tomorrow capacitation, next day stakeholders, on and on and on and on. We parrot after the West's new jargon towards Africa, without thinking. It is this misremembering that creates nostalgia that drove Britain out of the EU in an attempt to return to what they know as their glorious days, their glorious past, even when the circumstances in the world have fundamentally changed. Do I need really to use India to make a point? No. Just look at the colonization of your own country by Captain Lugard, an army officer working for the British East African Company. Same model like India, but at a different scale. They were looking for raw materials for British industry, cheap labor to fight imperial wars, creating King's African Rifles, KR, that eventually became a terrible post-colonial army in Africa and in Uganda, producing Idi Amin. And commodities and markets is what they were looking for to change the tastes of Ugandans, in favor of the British products. This still happens today in our families, in our businesses. We buy foreign, yet the best of foods, are grown in our backyard. Now, when Lugard invited King Ntare V of Nkore Kingdom for a meeting towards the end of April 1894 in a plan to force Ntare into an agreement, Ntare replied, and I quote, "I will not meet you now because I lost my cows to disease, and therefore I am not in position to meet foreigners," close quote. Lugard interpreted this as arrogance. Anyhow, Ntare had no options because by May 1895, the next year, Nkore signed this agreement for protection in quotes, and a man they later appointed Prime Minister called Nuwambaguta. Even the illiterate King Ntare knew this wasn't an invitation to a party of gentlemen. It was about resources and the end of the king's power over his territory. But you know what? This history isn't our subject for today. I just love history. I just want to give you context on the effect of trade and markets so you can understand what a customer means to your company, to you, and to your country's wealth. Just to emphasize the point that who you sell to, their income levels, their location, geographical and otherwise, their buying power, their capacity, their buying patterns are all raw materials. This kind is intelligence information nations as well as companies tend to fight over. My definition of a customer, therefore, is, and I quote, "he or she who takes out their hard-earned income and take a portion of it to pay for your own creativity." Let me repeat, he or she who takes out a portion of their hard-earned income to pay for your creativity. This person is more important than your brother, than your sister, or any relative you can think of. They are so important that they define your economic existence. They are so important that they are the reason, if you are listening to me, that you went to school. They're the reason you started a business. They're the reason you have a product. It is the reason you or your parents paid fees, school fees, so that you can gain acceptance of this one person who will buy your services or your products. I use the term school fees because in Uganda we seem to go to school forever but not learning much about the tools that change nations or even probably help us learn how to think. You could also define customer service. I moved from a customer now to service as, open quotes, assistance and advice provided by a company to those people who buy or use its products and services, close quote. It is the going above and beyond to keep a customer happy, whether that means answering any questions that they may have or resolving issues with a positive attitude. Customer satisfaction is your top priority, and hopefully you create loyal, returning customers, close quote. Now, if we liken a customer to a visitor, you know that visitors only return to a place where they were treated very well on their first visit, given the impressions they made of the host. Remember the preliminary stage in our earlier sales call topic? Well, therefore, if you open your home, read product, to visitors, you as a host must keep up the good feeling, read attitude, but also expect inconveniences so often and face them head on in order to grow and serve these customers with better understanding. It's a give and take scenario. Let me give you a personal example. In 2006, my wife asked me what we should do when God had put on her heart the idea of serving Him in a church setting, a sort of Bible study, a Bible teaching house. Would we execute this by ourselves without relying on external help? She asked. Since this wasn't an area we had any experience in, would we rent a place for this activity? She asked. I reflected and I said, no. I said, we could use our own compound at home for this activity rather than suffer rental charges for a facility we would only need once a week. While we fulfilled one need, that of finding a venue for people we didn't know, we had to figure out how to deal with the inconvenience of finding water for people, toilets to use, visiting children play area, our own children having to use the same facilities with people we didn't know, and the possibility of transmitting ailments, the matters of security, and many more other concerns. Look, we had to do this with a good feeling. Read the attitude of faith and the spirit of giving. I think I will speak about this in another episode in regard to how to make a visitor, read a customer, happy when they have been attracted. Now, at this stage, I assume you know your product very well, both the benefits and the features to your customers, and you can vouch, rehearse them, remember them, even in your sleep. There are 3 things I would like to introduce to us as customer service in this topic today. The first is called place. Your customers are in a specific geographical or physical location, and you must decide how to reach them at less cost with a good and timely service at a profitable margin. Please mark those. Reach them at a less cost, good and timely service at a profitable margin. You must decide this early, given your product and your expected consumers, based on either survey you've done or simply the gut feeling given the experience you have. I use that word gut feeling sparingly, cautiously, I think I should say, because sometimes gut feelings can drive you as an entrepreneur even before the numbers become clearer at the start, but these feelings must be borne out later by facts or you are dead on arrival with your product. Let me demonstrate this with an example. About a week ago, I walked through Upper Buziga towards Konge area. I turned left to Sarama Road in this Makindi area. For those of you who know these places, I then crossed the road straight and went uphill to Masaja. I went on to Chikajo, beautiful names. Then through Chibira Zone, I continued to Sabala, then to Ndeje. I turned off at Lubugumu Road. I'll have a time for these names because each of these names just means something that you pass your eyes over but could help you understand. So I turned off at the Lubugumu Road, reconnecting with the old Entebbe Road near Zana. I walked on to Entebbe Road and turned off at Lubowa on the left. This is the old Entebbe Road. Climbing that steep hill to the top and then taking a left turn to open up on the other side at Seguku Point. Then I went on to Kajansi, to Chigo, to Kadia Abachala, to Kazi, to Munyonyo, and then back to Buziga, covering a distance of 32.5 kilometers. In all this, I wanted to see the nature of business that thrives in this area, especially under this coronavirus lockdown, and how customers behave. Food and entertainment businesses are the biggest here. I found some businesses with interesting names that I kept taking picture of and recording. Obushera Chinyankore Chichiga Baibaguma, shouted one at Salama Road. Ani alemesa pork joint as I approached the Zana area. Kampala Nyuma Pub and Glory Day and Parking as in Chikajo, just after Masaja. MK First Class Pork Joint as I descended down from Buziga Hill to Munyonyo area. And listen to this one. Private investigation on cheating spouses and fraud services. This is in Munyonyo area. I don't know whether people who live there do something unique in that area or this guy is up to something. Another one, Katogo 24/7 in the Gaba area. And then there are these provocatively crafted long names such as Allah of the Quran is not the God of the Bible and Jesus is not the Prophet Isa of Islam Church. Mouthful. Now, what hit me was the numbers of people walking early in the morning in all these places, some offloading cabbages, cassava, matoke, avocado, and other types of food. The number of small corner shops opening early, mostly managed by women and children. The noise and the buzz, B-U-Z-Z, on the road, along with the flowing dirt as we jumped over potholes to maneuver our way and avoid passing cars splashing us with this dirt. Pretty good business it was, but strangely, I had this funny feeling. I kept looking for one of our products in the food sector, and it was conspicuously missing here. I looked, I checked, I craned, I stopped, I turned around. I wanted to know through my covered nose and mouth, because I had a mask on, about our product. I didn't need to search anymore. I could clearly see competition was walking all over us in these heavily flourishing morning trades, yet we have a great tasting product. I know this product not just because we are invested in it, but so many referrals of those who test it and they tell us it is good, but there was nothing here in this 32-kilometer radius we had just walked. Right there and then, I fully understood and appreciated the value of that word place in customer service. Place means presence. A product that cannot be where it should be so that it is bought is very unhelpful. However great the attributes and benefits around it, you can all speak about. Customers are only customers if you are able to reach them in a manner and style they understand, or bring them to this understanding if you have any unique one. This introduced me to another concept, distribution. Distribution. I hope you're following me. If you have not listened to our first 3 segments, you will lose track in this one because there's a thread. These things are connected. Now, there's a successful restaurant chain in Kampala that began with 1 location and eventually grew to about 9. It then gave a franchise to a distributor for online orders. Last year, I met the owner, middle-aged gentleman, I was pitching for our own product in his outlets. A kind and engaging fellow whose father worked in Kirembe mines in the 1960s as a truck driver. He told me, and I quote, "We had to invest in centralized preparation and cooking of food for all our major outlets in the restaurant chain so that we could cut costs that tend to grow under decentralized procurement of supplies. It also helped us to maintain food quality standards at a uniform menu level. Now we have decided to invest in a fleet of custom-designed motorbikes along with a call center so that we can deliver directly to our customers. Our previous supplier of this service was doing it for many other people. He was not giving our customers specific attention. So the food orders, for example, would take so long to come through to us. And what's worse is that the food delivered to our customers would arrive sometimes cold. We were losing ground on account of a different feel for our food in the restaurants, which was different from that which we delivered in homes and offices. We knew we could fix customer issues if we spoke to them directly. We could build our own database out of our interaction with these customers. We could know them personally rather than go through third parties." Close quote. It was a long quote, but I'm just quoting this man, trying to be as verbatim as I could. If you don't take notes, you'll be in a lot of problems remembering things. I take notes when I'm speaking to people, for I know not when these notes will come in handy. And this is how I keep these long quotes. This example need not get any further explanation. Those of you listening to me, to reach a customer and serve them well. Distribution, place, and presence. Distribution, place, and presence are key ingredients. Customers are lazy, or they tend to be, because yet they have a high expectation of our products. They want our products when and wherever they expect them to be. There can be no excuses from us on this matter. If we don't understand this psyche of a customer, and we do not do this the way he or she wants it, we will suffer what banks are going through today in adaptation of banking service models after the disruption they have had with mobile money agents by telecoms in the last 5 years. Well, I like to stop here. I want to thank you. We will meet again on May 1st, 2020 at 9 o'clock. May 1st, 2020 at 9 o'clock. God bless you as we all stand together and fight to stay innovative and alive in this lockdown. Bye-bye.